Hello and welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I'll be drawing a creature from D&D, and I'll also be talking about its lore, its history, and what it's like to fight. This week I'll be talking about a classic creature, the Displacer Beast. But what are Displacer Beasts? Well, they are described as large cats, usually drawn like kind of bluish panthers. They have 6 legs and 2 very, very large, usually barbed tentacles on their backs. Sometimes drawn protruding from their faces like whiskers as well, but typically on their backs. They're an iconic monster from D&D, usually meeting the end of quite a few party members who reach 3rd level. This is a challenge rating 3 creature, and that's usually just about the time that the DM gloves come off, where the safety bubble that has been saving new players from a terrible, terrible death comes off, and combat encounters become a little bit more treacherous than just your standard, you have some HP, you have a little bit of an armor class, and you have a sword in your hand. You have to think about these kind of fights starting from 3rd level and up, and a good example is the Displacer Beast. Now, the inspiration for the Displacer Beast can tell us quite a lot about what these creatures act like. They're apparently inspired by a creature called the Coeurl, spelt Coeurl. Unlike a lot of D&D creatures, this isn't a mythological creature, this isn't something pulled from a Greek legend or Egyptian myths or something like that. Coeurls are a species of predators from the sci-fi novelists A.E. van Vogt, V-O-G-T, Van Vogt's novel Voyage of the Space Beagle in 1950, which was inspired by a short novel that he wrote called The Black Destroyer in 1939. Now, in this story, Coeurls are described as large cats, very similar to our Displacer Beast, with 4 legs twice as long as their hind legs and tentacles attached to their shoulders that terminate in suction cups. So you can see that the imagery is very, very similar. When a human starship arrives on the planet of the Coeurl, they mistake this creature for being unintelligent. They see a big cat, they think it's just going to be a beast. They're massively, massively wrong. But before they learn that lesson, they invite this creature onto their ship, and the Coeurl kind of goes along with it for a while, hoping to learn a little bit more about humans. And eventually it does. It learns that it can feed on what it calls the id of the humans inside this ship, preys upon them mercilessly thereafter. Now, Displacer Beasts and Coeurls aren't just in D&D. Coeurls in specific often turn up in Final Fantasy games. They're usually depicted with that kind of tentacles for whiskers kind of thing, rather than tentacles on the backs or the shoulders. They definitely keep the barbs at the end though. It's a stylistic choice that I prefer, and I think that's how I'll be drawing them today. They can also be seen as Cocals in the Guild Wars franchise, where they appear more like a reptilian cat, almost like a flightless griffin. The tentacles on their shoulders are replaced with kind of vestigial wings that have bones and joints inside them that act more like barbed pincers, if that makes sense. But Displacer Beasts are described as lawful evil monstrosities. That's the 5th edition term for magical creatures, and they are inherently magical. They're naturally magical creatures. They descend from or lived in the Feywilds. They're described as having roamed the twilight lands of the Feywilds and were at one point caught and tamed, supposedly, by the Unseelie Court of the Fey. The Unseelie Court trained them in nefarious tasks like hunting unicorns and pegasi in the Feywilds. They're trackers and hunters, killers by nature, and just like the Coeurl that they are inspired by, they're described as having this same sort of malevolent intelligence, which is kind of weird because on their stat sheet they're actually mechanically only described as having 6 intelligence, which is a -2 to all rolls, and they don't know any languages. And even if they're not going to pass any arcana checks, we can still roleplay them as being malevolently intelligent. They're actually described as one of the very few creatures, even in D&D, that are natural but also hunt for sport or for pleasure, not necessarily just to eat. They used this fantastic intelligence, supposedly, to escape the Feywilds and the clutches of the Unseelie Court. That's how they turned up in our realm, in our world. But this court chose to chase them down with blink dogs, large dogs also of the Feywilds that can teleport short distances. And again, I really want to do another video on them because they are super exciting. They're very, very fun to draw. So I won't go into too much depth about blink dogs, but as a result of being used as bloodhounds to track down the Displacer Beasts, ever since then all Displacer Beasts know blink dogs to be their natural enemy. They will attack them on sight. I mean, they pretty much attack almost anything on sight, but they will especially go for blink dogs. But what are Displacer Beasts like to fight? Nothing crazily special. alright? When you describe something as a massive panther with 6 legs and barbed tentacles on its back, you can pretty much expect what you're going to get from a Displacer Beast. It's got 40-foot movement speed, nice and quick. Agile like a cat. It's got 18 strength, which is pretty terrifying. 15 dex, so it's going to get out of the way of a lot of traps. As you would hope, it's got dark vision up to 60 feet. It's a nocturnal predator after all. It can attack you twice per turn with these tentacles on its back, whose damage falls into 2 parts. Firstly, it whips you, dealing 1d6 plus 4 bludgeoning damage, and then the barbs on the suction cups at the very end deal 1d6 piercing damage on top of that. So they can quite quickly tear you limb from limb. But at challenge rating 3, you're kind of expecting this level of damage. You should probably know what to do with that kind of thing. Their real power lies in their namesake, their displacement and avoidance abilities. They're described as constantly, innately, magically producing an image of themselves nearby. Whether that's a few feet away, a few inches away, what have you, they're really hard to look at. You can't really tell where they are ever. In fact, thieves, rogues, alchemists, and wizards are obsessed with obtaining the coats of these Displacer Beasts to make into cloaks or capes or clothes with the same property, hopefully. Rogues are even supposed to collect the eyes of Displacer Beasts and keep them in their pockets in the hope that they will avoid detection. There's no evidence to suggest that actually happens, but it is a lucky charm amongst rogues, so maybe something to add if you're playing a rogue to your rogue's pocket collection. But the interesting thing about these creatures is that this ability, this kind of displacement, this mirror image effect, manifests in really different ways in every single edition. So for example, in 5th edition, the one we're playing in now, avoidance means that if they ever are attacked by something like a fireball, something where they can make a saving throw to avoid some of the damage, if they fail, they will, no matter what happens, only take half of the damage that they're supposed to. But if they pass, they take no damage whatsoever, the idea being that you missed them entirely, you were attacking the image and not them. Their main ability though is this displacement, which means that no matter what happens, you always have disadvantage to attack them. Suddenly their armor class isn't so laughable. They have 13 armor class, spoilers, but suddenly that's not so much of a poor deal for them because they're still going to have disadvantage. You're still going to have disadvantage to attack them every single time you try. Now this effect is magical and it's a concentration ability for the Displacer Beast that they have up innately, and you can disrupt it either through magical means. You can maybe make a void area of 0 magic, or you can try the more mundane method of smacking them really hard on the head. If you somehow manage to hit these creatures, then the displacement effect goes away until the end of their next turn, at which point it comes back up. But if you can keep beating on them after you've hit them once, you can manage to defeat them. So they're pretty tough to hit. They're going to deal quite a lot of damage before you can manage to strike a blow on them at the 3rd level. But 5th edition is the first edition to use this advantage and disadvantage mechanic, the rolling twice and picking either the best or the worst result. So how does displacement manifest itself in other editions? How has this been a staple since 1st edition without the idea of disadvantage? Well, in 1st edition, they were a bit more mundane. There was a bit more maths involved in 1st edition, and so they were simply described as having this displacement effect, but all that meant for you was that you had to take away 2. You did -2 to any roll to hit this creature from range or close up. I think they reached the apex of their terrifyingness in 4th edition though. They're described thusly. If you roll an odd number to attack this creature, you automatically fail. If you roll an even number, you automatically hit. That to me doesn't say that you're adding anything to this. Doesn't mean that if you add your strength modifier, you have more of a chance to hit it. This is literally a 50-50 whether or not you are actually able to hit this creature, which seems massively frustrating, especially in 4th edition, something that's designed to make you feel like a superhero speeding through encounters. The Displacer Beast could cause real trouble for some adventurers. Anyway, that's it for the Displacer Beast today. Thank you so much for joining me on another Monster Monday. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to hit the little thumbs up, the little like button down below. And if you could spare a moment to share this video with just one person. We're a new channel, and if everybody shares with one person, it'll really help us to grow. So thanks very much, and until next time, happy monster hunting.